In today's episode of Runner's Foot Health, I'm going to talk about your tripod. Firstly, why it's so important for runners to understand their tripod. And then once we've covered that, I'm going to discuss some ways that you can improve your tripod in order to become a stronger, more efficient runner. A triangle is the strongest geometric shape, and every foot stands on one. We call it the tripod or the foot tripod. Each foot has its own unique size and its own unique shape of this tripod. And the size and shape of it can actually tell you a lot about the foot, how it moves, and how efficient it is. There's a really simple way to test your tripod, so stay tuned for it. Hey, Joe here. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to discuss your tripod and how it pertains to running. Just like every part of you, your foot is unique, but we can use some basic principles of how the average body or the typical body moves in order to improve your unique foot. Regardless of how strong and efficient your foot is, it stands on a tripod with all the pressures going up and down, going through 3 points. A healthier foot is going to have a wider, bigger tripod, allowing the joints and all the structures to move properly, whereas a less efficient foot is going to have a more narrow tripod. The optimal points of the tripod are 1 in the back of the foot under the heel, and 2 in the front of the foot, 1 under the knuckle of the big toe, and 1 under the knuckle of the little toe. That gives a nice, big, wide, stable tripod for the foot to sit on, and that allows the foot to pronate and supinate properly. Let's talk about walking for 1 minute. Every time you take a step, you contact the ground with your heel, and then you roll over the foot towards the toes where you eventually push off. At first contact, all the pressure is going through the heel, and as you progress through your gait cycle, the forces are slowly going towards the front of the foot. First, it goes a little bit towards the inside of the foot, then it travels out and eventually comes all the way in towards the big toe, and that's where you push off for your next step. What's important to note, though, is that the forces have to stay within the boundaries of the tripod, of the triangle, in order for you to maintain stability. Many people, including myself, have callus formed under the knuckle of the second or even of the third toe, and this usually comes from the innermost point of the tripod not being all the way by the big toe, but instead being a little narrower either by the second toe or even the third toe. This leads to a narrow tripod as well as a short foot, which I'll explain in a minute. The easiest way to test your tripod is just to stand barefoot on a flat surface. I am not kidding. That's it. Just standing. What you're going to want to do is take off your shoes and socks and stand on a flat surface. But when you're standing, I want you to focus and really appreciate where you feel the pressures are in the foot. Do you feel them more in one of the 3 points, or maybe you feel it in 2 of them and not so much in the other? When I do this, I feel most of the forces going through the heel of my foot, with some of it going towards the front outer portion, but really not a lot going to the front inner portion around the big toe. This is because my foot doesn't like to twist to get the big toe planted against the ground. And this leaves me with a narrower tripod and a less efficient gait pattern. If you have my kind of foot, and honestly it's a really, really common kind of foot, and you take a look at the bottom of your running shoes, the front where you're pushing off will have more wear towards the front outside corner versus the right at the front or even the front inner portion. Since the inner part of the foot is longer than the outer part of the foot, the fact that I push off with the outer part of the foot gives me a shorter lever, which is less efficient and also is a less strong stride. I've always had really flat feet, but recently I've started to work on it and try to improve my ability to pronate and supinate properly. And the incredible, amazing news is that the other day I was walking in my backyard and my feet were wet and I wasn't really paying attention to much. And when I turned around, I noticed that my footprints actually had the arch shape in it, which means that my foot is starting to get more of an arch, which is amazing. So if you also have that kind of issue with your big toe not staying down, there's a few things you could do to improve it. So the first thing you could do is that when you're doing standing exercises like squats and deadlifts, you can put a TheraBand under the knuckles of your two big toes. This forces you to plant your feet down and plant the big toe down in order to keep the TheraBand steady. I'm not a big fan of this exercise to start with because very often what you'll find is that you're going to be scrunching up your toes trying to hold down the TheraBand. The next exercises you can do is arch raises. For this one, you're going to sit down with your foot flat against the floor and you're going to try to raise up the arch and shorten the foot while keeping all 3 points of the tripod connected to the ground. For this exercise, I've also noticed people struggling and scrunching up their toes or not maintaining contact with the knuckle of their big toe. But just as a side note, if you do notice yourself scrunching your toes with any of these exercises, it's really not a big deal. Just stop doing that exercise for now, go to other exercises that you're able to do, and then just come back to it when you feel like you're stronger and more efficient. Exercise number 3 is to mimic the walking motion, but focusing the pressures to go from the heel to the front inner portion of the foot as you're moving the body forward over the foot. Do whatever you need to do in order to get the pressures to move over that big toe. You might need to twist your body a little bit just to make sure that the pressure goes to the right place, and that's fine. If you find that you're not able to maintain contact with one of the 3 points of the tripod, you could stick a little wedge or something underneath just to make sure that you're really maintaining good contact throughout the movement while your foot is pronating and supinating. I actually learned this technique with the wedge from a course that I'm taking, and one that I'd actually highly recommend, from Anatomy in Motion. This video isn't sponsored or anything by them, but I'll drop a link in the description of the website just in case you're interested in learning more or maybe taking one of their courses. Exercise number 4, and this is the easiest to do but the most difficult to master, and that is toe yoga. Toe yoga is not easy because you're learning a new movement and you're teaching the muscles and joints and everything to move in a way that is just not used to moving it. To do toe yoga, you're going to sit on a chair with your feet flat on the floor. Now you're going to lift up just your big toe while keeping the knuckle of the big toe down on the ground and the other 4 toes flat on the ground. You're going to then lower that big toe and do the opposite, lifting up just the 4 toes while keeping the big toe down on the ground. Make sure that you don't scrunch up that big toe or the other 4 toes when you're doing this exercise. This will teach your muscles to work in an independent, more efficient way. So you understand now why it's so important to keep your big toe down in order to have good, strong, efficient pronation and supination. But if you want to learn more about those terms and you want to understand that they're not at all scary, then click right here to watch this video.